All right, we are back with the infamous Ritu Raj. Can you, although I've kind of done already, introduce yourself and what you do?
Hi, my name is Ritu Raj. I am a serial entrepreneur. And before being a serial entrepreneur, I was a senior executive and then a senior partner at Accenture.
Well, and you have a pretty diverse background. You got tech, sales. You obviously know how to execute a vision and design it. Can you share with us a little bit about how that evolved from when you were younger, without going through each company, but how that evolved to get you to the point where you are?
Um, so I think the key is I have, and it's not that I had it originally, but I think somewhere amount of soul searching, I have basically three principles that guide me. Three principles. The first is people. Taking care of people, having great people around you, and in another sense of it, I also really think and pull out the expertise of people.
Hmm.
It's very important. I like to work with multiple experts, and 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 another piece of it, I believe that making mistakes is absolutely okay.
Yeah, have
It's
you ever heard of the Dyson Entrepreneurial um, Institute? I believe it's called something like that in the UK, where he hires engineers and wants them to fail continuously.
yeah, I think that would be interesting. I'm more into making mistakes. Failing is great, but I think making mistakes, until unless you don't have the freedom to make mistakes, you will never really bring something innovative up.
Good distinction.
Yeah, so that's one. Then I am a firm and kind of like anal about innovation. And innovation for me is a little bit different than, innovation, right? I mean, like the word innovation. It's kind of cliched now. I think innovation is like thinking out of the box, outside the box, thinking outside the four lines, thinking for other ways or another way to produce the result instead of the regular way of producing results. Um, it's called, there is a word for it, but I can't remember, but I remember when I was running massive sales team, I'm not talking small sales teams, we're talking about like 200 people managing $1.4 billion of revenue. I basically trained everybody and all managers to think about the results as number of dollars produced
Hmm.
to how many inbound calls were the salespeople getting. And we changed the attention to inbound calls. So funnily, what happened was people now were talking to their customers to get them to call them back.
Smart.
This is the age of the voicemails. Our results went like twice, and we were like really promoting it. So I think if you change the paradigm of results, you have new things that are come up. So that's the second principle.
Uh-huh.
And I think the third principle that has become part of my life, go ahead, you say. Okay. The third principle is design.
Hmm.
I have such a design philosophy. Uh, I think design is not just the color of the logo or the image of the logo or thing like that. It's like design thinking, which is, yes, an overused term these days, but like thinking through what the experience would be, the people who interact with you, right through and through. So let's say if you're working with a sales thing environment, where you're selling, you're an executive and you're selling to another executive.
Hmm.
You have to think through what will be the process for the person who is buying through and through after the product has been sold. What will be after? What would he want? What's his interest? How would his people think of him? Not the and once you do that, you are actually really committed to the customer. Um, and I did forget to mention one of the other things is, customers for me is people. I think of all customers as people. They have the same issues as I do, or everyone else has. Not like, they like the dog hotel, not that kind. I think in life they have the same thing. However rich you are, however powerful you are, however big you are in politics or enterprise or whatever, your issues are everyday issues are the same as any other person.
Yeah, you better believe it. That kind of brings me to another question about. It's actually a third question, but I'm going to skip questions a little bit because you're talking about people like that. I've been fortunate as well to work with obviously many types of people, and certainly in my business, but even before I was in this with Deloitte and whatnot, different size businesses, similarities, differences, global, local, whatever. You and I believe discussed top-down management a little bit on our
Yes.
last conversation and the importance of clear and timely outcomes. You've mentioned it. How have you and how do you impact the business with this objective and philosophy?
Um, I think the Drucker principles were very clear. It was like set up goals and set up objectives. I feel what's missing in a missing is people not really clearly defining outcomes. Clearly, not results, outcomes. It's a massive difference between outcome and results. And the more you can define outcomes and then have a system, not to wait for 3 months to kind of tell the outcomes, but actually update the outcomes on a weekly basis, positive, negative, just update the outcomes.
Right.
And the other really key factor is then these outcomes are not KPIs. KPIs are like results. Outcomes could be very different. Could be an outcome could be for, let's say, a sales team.
Mm-hmm.
It could be um, it's not who cares about the results being met, right? Because eventually, if you have a good sales team and everything, you will meet results. But the outcome could be that everyone is really happy and they are not stressed out. So outcomes can also be very personal based outcomes. And that the companies, everyone in the companies, if you look at sometimes Google results, and when they do 20% quarter over quarter, imagine how relaxed the company is,
Right.
how much innovation it can do instead of fighting the battle.
Well, it synergizes. It sounds to me like you said people, millennials especially, they like to know the vision. They like to be accountable. I can't imagine when you say it that simply that the best way to them to be accountable properly is to have these outcomes on a weekly basis.
Yes. Getting the outcomes, like updating the outcomes on a weekly basis.
Right.
There are really great, one reason the success of Google, for instance, and some other companies, but I can define and say, they followed the OKR principle. I don't know if your viewers have heard of it. It's called Objective and Key Resources,
Mm-hmm.
originally invented in Intel. But objectives and key results are like so embedded in Google's culture, not really in the last 2 years because they became suddenly too big through acquisitions. But at a point, 2 years or two past, not I would say in the past 2 years, but even before that, everybody in Google had a file, the employee file, had a number on it. And where one was the biggest, because they're engineers, the one is the biggest, but the exact number for them was zero point 0.7 because they had three outcomes, three results to produce. And if they did two of the three results, they were considered to be brilliant. If they did three of the three results, either they were overworking, or they were their outcomes they were promising were not big enough.
Wow.
So zero point 0.7 on their folder was the ultimate result. So I think it's the millennials who want more, uh, autonomy.
Right.
They actually work really well if you can like define the outcomes they want them to produce.
So let me interject there for a minute. So how do you feel? This is throwing a different question here. Current affairs for sure, as in today. Have you heard about that New York Times scathing article about Amazon and how they treat their people?
Uh, I think here's the problem. I think the problem is I read the article and I read the follow up by Jeff Bezos.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is anything, if you take small snippets of conversations, you can portray anybody like anything, right?
Right.
So I think in those things, the context was missing, right? I worked, you know, I must say personally, I'm a very aggressive manager and executive. I'm not, I'm like, I think of, you know, my mind works like a, battle commander, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're producing big results,
Yeah.
this is not an emotional business. At the same time, I totally take care of the people who work for me. Not by telling them, oh my God, great work done, but I take care of their basic needs, their family needs, and stuff like that. If their kid is sick, first you go attend to your kid. And don't think about a day off. I'm talking about everybody, anybody in the company.
Mm-hmm.
That's being humanitarian, right? But it doesn't mean. So I think that's where I think I don't believe in that. I believe in being a humanitarian, taking care of your people, but pushing, pushing, pushing. There is nothing, you know. You build a career, you build
Yeah. Well,
your company.
I compare a lot of things to sports, and the teams that win the championships, the players hold each other accountable to do what they got to do to win the championship.
Yes, and they push.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
like, and that's why I think there could be. I think like companies like Amazon, because they were growing so fast, their hiring wasn't as good as it could be. If you look at like Google, Facebook, their hiring is so tuned to the
Right.
culture they have created. You know,
Yeah.
they nobody in Google says, "Oh, I'm like burnt out," or Facebook. Nobody says, "Oh, I'm like feeling burnt out." No, they work their ass off.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Let me ask you. You obviously been a leader in creating ways for entrepreneurs to market their technologies, their innovations to the marketplace, to clients, meaning also the increase of sales you had. What are some of the challenges and at the same time opportunities that you've seen during that time?
Well, I think there are two worlds that are kind of like coming, I can never come together, but are also there. I
Mm-hmm.
think in recent years, in the Silicon Valley, especially what I call internet based companies,
Mm-hmm.
to say the digital companies, I think what they have is they have merged two fields, which is the field of marketing and sales, right?
Right.
And they call it growth. So, and then the other word which with it is called growth hacking. It's like marketing meets sales meets engineering all at the same time, because at
It's
some point
4:30.
your your whole marketing segment, the whole growth works as one thing, very heavily influenced by engineering and design. So it's kind of a very interesting world. It's a very interesting world. I don't think that anybody has a formula for it. um, there's a lot of challenges to it. I think the regular sales, or what I call sales 3.0 or sales 4.0, I think also has some more challenges that are coming in, because more and more people don't want to talk to you. They'll just send me an email.
Right.
So I don't think anybody, including me, and I think a lot about it, we don't have the exact formula worked out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we will do lead scoring, and then the lead scoring is based on some email sent. Come on, man, where do the people go? Right? I think the traditional sales model of shaking hands and meeting has kind of like slowly declining.
Right.
Um, so I think there are major challenges, and nobody has yet figured out good working models of the new sales system that is going to be there. You know, I and let me just say this is my belief. It's not anybody's belief.
Sure.
Um, I think in my one of my biggest belief is Facebook is more important than LinkedIn. It's kind of, so there are, in Twitter you set up your influence, right, and how many people follow you, how many people reply back to you.
Right.
In LinkedIn, this is your professional network.
Right.
It doesn't like help if I send somebody a note saying, hey, will you help me, because the degree of separateness is a little bit bigger. I get 5 to 10 LinkedIn requests every day. Um, I have like 50 or 1,000 people on Twitter, and I am an influencer there. I have conversations with people on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Then Facebook, I think, is the place where if you want to get to know somebody, they become on your Facebook wall. Like you share your life with them. I think that's the closest I can think of the way I used to sell when I was selling. Um, it was a person. It was a person selling a solution to someone else who was going to remain my friend, or I would not say a friend, but like whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
customer or whatever.
Right.
That person would be for a long time. Even after I sold them something, they will be my friend.
Well, you developed if I can interject, you developed a relationship, and one of the things I was going to add into this is if you were to give advice for up and coming leaders, and you're talking about, we've lost the people aspect, then would you advise them how important relationships have been that you've developed over the years to both your career growth and your personal growth?
Uh, how I would put it is that people are the most important.
Right.
People are the most important. Uh, and how you leave people is more important than people themselves, or how you leave people.
Right.
So it's not what your ongoing relationships. How do you leave them? I've had for a long time I was hiring people. It's not people say, oh, you don't fit, and they stop talking to you, right? For me, the most important thing is how you leave that person. What do you leave? I have never left people about the companies that I have. I leave them really excited about the company and me, and leave them feeling great about themselves.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's brilliant. We actually talk a lot about that with people when we put people together. Obviously, for management and looking for candidates, and it really comes down to who they are, their passion, their accomplishments. In other words, their outcomes, and not just a list of responsibilities that they did in their job.
yes,
Basically, it's
those things you can grow into if you have the skills.
absolutely, absolutely. Also, a few personal questions. Not too personal, but personal.
Yes,
Do you have a pet?
I have a cat these days.
You have a cat. You have a dog motel, and you have a cat.
Yeah, we do. Yes, my dog died
Oh,
two and a
sorry.
half years ago. She was with me for 13 years, and I couldn't get myself to get another dog. So I have a snub-nosed cat, a little Persian.
Very cool. Do you have a favorite activity or sport?
I box. Um, I'm not a
Cool.
professional boxer, but I love sparring.
Nice.
Um,
Remind
uh,
me not to get you pissed off at me.
I love sparring.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV show?
Um, I am addicted to TV shows. I mean, like, it's like unreal how you can get addicted to it. I don't drink, so I don't go out. So I need something to do in the evening. So I watch TV shows. So these days, my favorite is Suits.
Ah,
And, it's weird. At this present moment in the last 2, 3 weeks, we only had one show. So I love TV shows.
that's cool. That's cool. I've seen that. It's not bad. I got addicted to House of Cards not too long
Yeah,
ago.
I love House of Cards, yes.
Crazy. Do you have a favorite book?
Um, I've been, I read a lot.
I noticed behind you.
Yeah, I read like 2.5 hours a day. I'm addicted to reading. I think my favorite book, and I'm still kind of dealing with it, is Kahneman's Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast, or Thinking
Wow.
Fast, Thinking Slow. Because it's something I deal with personally. I'm super fast thinking, but I sometimes leave people. So, it's one of my favorite books.
A friend of mine, actually doing a video interview with him about a week, just wrote this book called Disrupt You. Jay Samit.
I heard about it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be good. Somebody else told me it was good too, and so I'm going to check that out as well. Lastly, how about music and food? What do you like?
Uh, you know, I used to listen to a lot of jazz, ECM jazz, not just any jazz. So Jack DeJohnette, Clemmer. Uh, but my problem is I can only do one thing at a time, so I don't listen to music because then I only listen to music, nothing else.
Got it. So you don't eat your
So
favorite food while listening to a favorite music.
I can't do those things. So I have to, when I eat my favorite, I love Indian food and sushi at the same time. I know it's just weird. Spicy and no spice.
All right. Well, on that, that's a good ending. Thanks so much for participating.
Thank you for having me on your show.